The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. With those words from Carl Jung, welcome to Live Oak Unitarian Universalist Congregation. I'm Jim Wells, a member of the worship ministry, and I will be the worship associate this morning. In this liberal religious community, we welcome all. Our generations join together to nurture spiritual growth and personal transformation, that we may be inspired to transform the world with love, compassion, and justice. Here at Live Oak, and many of our homes are located on the traditional land of the Chumash peoples. In recognizing this, we pay respect to the Chumash people, the history and culture of that community, and all Native Americans as America's first peoples. We acknowledge and appreciate the Chumash people as we continue to help steward this land which we all love.
Welcome to this house of memory and celebration. Today's Easter. We have a bonnet. We got a couple bonnets in the room. That's great. Mary, I saw you come in. You took it off. Yeah, that's there. Okay, that's enough. Looking good. Looking good. Before belief, there was wonder. Before doctrine, there was story. Before theology, there was a child saying, "Stay." May this be a time of staying with what matters, with what aches, with what yearns to be authentic, compassionate, sincere, with what longs to be real. Let us begin by arriving. Wherever you are seated, allow your body to be held by the furniture beneath you, the floor beneath your feet, the earth beneath the building. Take a slow breath in and let it out. Imagine yourself at the edge of a garden, the kind where things grow unevenly, where some plants lean toward the light, where the ground bears signs of past seasons, fallen leaves, old stalks, rich, dark soil. Notice the air in this place. It carries the scent of the earth, of something alive and returning. Notice what draws your attention. Perhaps a patch of sunlight, perhaps a quiet corner, perhaps something green pushing up where you did not expect it. Now, listen. You may hear wind moving through the leaves, birds at a distance, the small sounds of life continuing. In this garden, imagine a quiet reassurance. Rest here. So we have bunny rabbits as our theme for some reason on Easter. It's going to be a hair-raising experience. Thought I'd get that out of the way early there, get us down to a level we can relate to. Rabbits are a symbol of fertility, so are eggs. So this is the season of things growing, of renewal. We have rabbits among us. Nowadays, it's more common for rabbits to bring candy than actual eggs. And I noticed over at CVS, there was an entire row of candy. And in the next section, Diabetes test kits. Time to check that glucose level. The Easter season is the worship of the East. It's from the goddess Ostra, the great Bede the Venerable wrote about this pagan goddess, very similar to Astara and other variations. The word actually plays off of the meaning of the word East. The month April is based on that goddess, and so we have a month of eastward gazing. Why East? Because that's the dawn. That's where the sun comes, the longer days come, and religions all over the world have a strong theme of sun worship. We knew that this thing up in the heavens gave us life, and we are grateful. In the winter, it kind of goes away, and then in the spring is reborn, resurrection. There's our theme. Our main story involves Velvet, a Velveteen Rabbit. There once was a Velveteen Rabbit, and in the beginning, he was really splendid. He was fat and bunchy, as a rabbit should be. His coat was spotted brown and white. He had real thread whiskers, and his ears were lined with pink sateen. We have original blessing here. In psychological terms, this is the divine child archetype. We're in the nursery. The story will unfold here. This is the early sense of wholeness before we discover shame. And the story actually doesn't start on Easter. It starts on Christmas. It's Christmas morning. The boy plays with a bunny that's in his big Christmas stocking. This is his favorite thing in the whole world. This is his new best friend. They play for an entire 2 hours. And then some aunts and uncles arrive. Aunts and uncles are always arriving, and they always throw things a little off. The bunny is set down, and there's some food. Other things happen, and the boy doesn't get back to it. The rabbit isn't so much rejected, just set aside. So here we are in the nursery, that early rehearsal for life with others. Mechanical toys strut about with buzzers and handles, impressive credentials. They speak confidently of efficiency. They brag about their technology. The rabbit, our protagonist, is made of sawdust and hope. And here the story names one of life's earliest lessons. The feeling of being worthy comes and goes. But maybe, if we're fortunate, we discover grace. In this story, grace comes in the form of another resident of the nursery, the skin horse. Skin means it was made of real animal skin of some kind. It's the mentor figure. Into this bustling nursery, this early rehearsal for life, there appears a figure most stories desperately need and frequently neglect. Quoting, "The skin horse had lived longer in the nursery than any of the others. He was so old that his brown coat was bald in patches and showed the seams underneath, and most of the hairs in his tail had been pulled out to string bead necklaces and other craft things." All right, let us begin right there. This is what wisdom looks like. Plain, unimpressive. The skin horse is patched together by love and loss. He bears the marks of being used, relied upon, pulled at. He is not interesting because he is intact. He is trustworthy because he is not. This is the archetype of the mentor, the wise old teacher. The mentor is the one who stays long enough to lose illusions. The spiritual director is the one who remains available after certainty dissolves. The rabbit, our protagonist, young, painfully self-aware, asks the question that launches the journey. What is real? The skin horse answers without flourish because wisdom has no need to impress. Real isn't how you're made, said the skin horse. It's a thing that happens to you. Okay, pause there. This is called initiation. The sense of self is not constructed, it is evoked. through encounter, suffering, attachment, and love. Worth is recognized through relationship. Okay, the skin horse continues. When a child loves you for a long, long time, not just to play with, but really loves you, then you become real. Notice this radical claim. This is beyond belief or achievement. We are made real by being loved over time. This is devastating news for control freaks and perfectionists, but deeply good news for the humble. The rabbit, like any honest seeker, asks a follow-up question. Does it hurt? And the skin horse does not gloss over the painful part. Sometimes, he said, for he was always truthful. But when you are real, you can be hurt. When you are real, you don't mind being hurt. Suffering never becomes pleasant. But suffering can become meaningful. When we are real, pain informs. And then comes the line in the story, the line every mentor tries to convey. It doesn't happen all at once. You become. It takes a long time. We might say spiritual growth is an endurance sport. Becoming real means discovering that growth looks suspiciously like repetition, the same themes, the same wounds met at slightly deeper levels of courage. The skin horse adds one final bracing truth. That's why it doesn't often happen to people who break easily or have sharp edges or who have to be carefully kept. It's a closing line that is both tender and hilarious, both devastating and somewhat liberating. By the time you are real, most of your hair has been loved off. Your eyes drop out, and you get loose in the joints and very shabby. I won't ask for a show of hands. But these things don't matter at all, he goes on, because once you are real, you can't be ugly, except to people who don't understand. I suppose you are real, said the rabbit. And then he wished he hadn't said it, for he thought the skin horse might be sensitive. But the skin horse only smiled. The boy's uncle made me real, he said. That was a great many years ago. But once you are real, you can't become unreal again. It lasts for always. Well, seasons move along, and in this story, springtime comes. And spring arrives with a quiet audacity of green, pushing up where no one scheduled it. The book says spring came, and they had long days in the garden, for wherever the boy went, the rabbit went too. This is the pivot of the story. This is Easter territory. The boy rediscovers the rabbit, and now they are best friends. Easter as experience, the moment after survival, when life says the story is not finished. This is resurrection. And in the story, it is the rabbit, worn thin by love, carried into the open air. He was shabbier now, the story tells us, and his brown velvet skin was worn in places so that it showed the canvas underneath. And the little boy loved him more for that. Spring, then, is not about returning to perfection. It is finding our way toward integration, integrity. What once felt like damage becomes evidence of having lived. What once felt like inadequacy becomes texture. This is one of the quiet revolutions of the Velveteen Rabbit. Love does not preserve us, it transforms us. And here comes the moment, half comic, half revelation, when the boy speaks the essential truth. You mustn't say he is a toy. He's real. He's referring to the rabbit. Somebody says, oh, your toy, just put your toy aside. No, this isn't a toy. He's real. Ah, yes. The most reliable prophets are often very young. The boy cannot define real, but he knows it when he sees it. This is how resurrection works. No metaphysics involved, just recognition. In Unitarian Universalist terms, this is the affirmation of the inherent worth and dignity. The season of spring says we have survived something. We were changed by love, and we are still worthy of joy. And the rabbit says, though softly, and without words actually, I am becoming, which is saying a lot. Spring is not the eradication of suffering. It is the end of depression's stubborn suggestion that suffering is all there is. The rabbit runs, not as a thing newly made, but as a being loved into aliveness. And the seasons change again, and it is summer. Things are brighter. After the tender turning green of spring, the long summer days arrive, unstructured days, days that smell like sun-warmed grass and freedom we're not sure we deserve. To read from the book, the boy would take the rabbit out into the garden, and they used to lie together in the long grass, and the boy would make tunnels for him and houses with sticks and green leaves. Summer is where imagination stretches its legs. Spring promises life. Summer dares us to live it. The rabbit is no longer tucked away. He is outdoors now, exposed, visible, beloved in full daylight. And it is here, in the open field of life, that the next initiatory moment arrives. To read from the book, and once, when the boy had gone away for a moment, the rabbit was left alone in the grass, and he saw real rabbits creeping out of the bushes near him. Ah, yes, the wild rabbits. Every spiritual journey has this moment when we encounter those who seem more authentic than we feel, more alive, more at home in their skins. They leap, they run, they belong. It says they were quite different from him. They were thin and twinkly and quick. And suddenly the rabbit feels it, that ache we rarely name in polite company, the longing to belong. Not just to be loved by one person, but to be recognized by a tribe. Here is the deep psychology of this moment. We want community. We want to connect with kindred spirits. We want to be seen by those who move the way we secretly long to move. The wild rabbits dance just out of reach, and the rabbit feels, perhaps for the first time, the grief of difference, of separation. Why don't you come play with us? One of them asked. How casual that invitation sounds, and how terrifying it can feel, because to join them, the rabbit would have to risk being known for who he truly is. The wild rabbits, bless them, are not cruel. They are simply honest. They sniff at him and said, he doesn't smell right. He isn't a rabbit at all. He's a toy. Ouch. This is the moment every seeker knows, when the connection we long for exposes the distance between longing and becoming. This is where many turn back. This is where self-doubt arises. But the story does something profound here. The rabbit's longing actually grows stronger. Yearning, after all, is not a flaw. It's a compass. Summer reveals what spring awakens, who we want to be in the world and with whom. In Unitarian Universalist language, this is the call to beloved community, to authenticity, together. Summer teaches us that solidarity begins with longing, that spiritual maturity includes aspiration. When wild rabbits reject our protagonist, they provoke the next stage of his becoming. And so summer does what summer always does. It shows us ways of being we have not yet grown into. And the days pass, not dramatically, but steadily. The book says time went on, and the little boy grew older. We know how to celebrate beginnings. We are reasonably good at mourning endings. But that long middle stretch where things quietly change, that is harder to name. The rabbit grows shabby, not unlovable, but worn. The book says the rabbit grew very old and shabby, but the little boy loved him more than ever. The velveteen becomes thinner, the seams loosen, the shine fades. And this is a crucial point. Nothing is wrong. This is what love looks like if we are so fortunate for it to last. This is the moment when we begin to trade illusion for depth of character. Physically, it is when the body requests humility. Spiritually, it's when meaning must live without novelty, and yet loss comes. Just because life insists on movement, the boy gets sick. And in that quiet terror of contagion, that ancient fear we all remember now too well, the rabbit is deemed unsafe. He was taken away from the boy and shut up in a cupboard. The rabbit waits in the dark, abandoned by circumstance. This is the anxious part of the story. We have entered anxious times. We all have these moments. One night, the boy was very ill. Illness has a way of reorganizing reality. The doctor came and went, and the nurse came and went, and the rabbit lay hidden in the bedclothes and did not dare to stir. Somebody put him back in bed with the boy, even though it wasn't entirely safe. Anxiety compresses the soul. We become very still, very watchful, desperate not to be the cause of harm. Many of us know this posture, living carefully, minimizing ourselves, trying not to be too much. But happily, the crisis passes. The boy survives. But here comes the hardest truth of anxious times. Survival has costs. One day, when the little boy was better, the nurse came and said, "You must get rid of all these old things. They harbor germs." This is how separation happens, because fear has taken command. What once was cherished is suddenly suspect, and the rabbit, faithful, worn, beloved, is swept up with the rubbish. Quote, "The rabbit was put in a sack with the old picture books and a lot of rubbish and carried out to the end of the garden to be burned." This is exile, the spiritual experience of being removed from the center of the story while still loving those within it. This is what anxious times do to communities too. They sort, they discard, they mistake contamination for complexity. And now, for the first time in the story, the rabbit fully understands. He lay still, thinking of the boy and how happy he had been with them. Memory becomes sanctuary, relationship becomes interior. And then, the moment that changes everything in the narrative. Quote, "Then a real tear trickled down his shabby little velvet nose and fell to the ground." This is the tear that comes when hope has nowhere to go. The sorrow that arrives only after illusions are gone. And this astonishingly, is where transformation begins. Anxious times tend to strip us of the essential. They take away distraction. They dismantle role and routine. They force the question, what actually matters now that I am afraid? In Unitarian Universalist life, we do not promise immunity from anxiety. We promise companionship through it. We do not deny the fear. We bless the tear. Because only what is fully felt can become fully real. Here is the first real tear. Only now, after love, after loss, after abandonment, does the rabbit weep. A real tear. This is the moment when grief becomes revelation. And the tear lands. Quote, something strange happened, for where the tear had fallen, a flower grew out of the garden. Transformation. Love is consecrated by loss. Easter lives here in this image of a flower bursting up out of the ground. In UU language, this is the quiet faith that meaning emerges even when explanations fail. As we know, loss revises things. But what remains, what grows where the real tears fall, is something truer than we expected. And this is not the end of the story. It is the end of what the rabbit once was. A fairy bursts out of the ground, a nature fairy, a spring fairy. Now, when everything that could be lost has been lost, something unexpected happens, a presence. Bunny, said a voice, close by. Bunny. This is not the voice of authority, this is the voice of recognition. The rabbit opens his eyes, if such a thing can be said of a toy, and sees that the flower has changed. It was a fairy. Let us be clear, especially among Unitarian Universalists, that this fairy arrives after loss has done its work. The fairy speaks only one essential truth. You were real to the boy. This is the moment of self-recognition. Spiritually speaking, this is grace. Now, you are real. You are real, all over. Notice the sequence. The rabbit was real before the fairy appeared. The fairy acknowledges what has already happened. In the inner life, this is when we incorporate new freedom, won through a difficult process. This is after the grief. A good mentor says, I see what you have lived through. I recognize who you have become. And then in the story, the fairy kissed him on his little nose. A simple kiss without explanation. At that moment, the rabbit knew that something had happened to him, and instead of being made of velveteen, he was suddenly a real rabbit with real fur. He becomes himself, fully. The fairy does not stay. They never do. Because mentors, guides, guardian angels, whatever language we use, these are transitional figures in our life. They appear at threshold moments. They bless. They disappear. You will need to be wise, the fairy says before she goes, for real things are wise. Wisdom here goes beyond certainty. It means responsiveness. It means discernment. It means participation in life as it is. Wisdom here means attunement. Real things are wise because they have been changed by experience, sometimes rough experience. They no longer argue with reality. They no longer confuse control with safety. Real things are wise because they have learned patience with ambiguity. To be patient about ambiguity is not an easy thing. In UU language, this is the wisdom at the heart of our faith. We practice discernment. We cultivate companionship. Consider the contrast. Mechanical toys are clever. Real things are wise. A clever life asks, what works? A wise life asks, what is faithful to what I have lived? This is why real things do not brag. They remember too much to brag. This is why real things move a little more slowly. They have learned the cost of haste. This is why true mentors do not rush to give advice. They listen. They have learned that truth arrives only after the nervous system settles down a bit. And the fairy? Well, quietly, she's disappeared. The fairy leaves because her work is complete. What remains is aliveness, presence, movement, belonging. The rabbit becomes a body capable of movement. Wisdom lives in timing, in restraint, in knowing when to leap and when to remain still. This is why resurrection in this story is not escape from the world, but return to it with humility, with responsiveness, with care. The fairy leaves because wisdom cannot be outsourced. No one can live wisely on our behalf. And so the rabbit enters the larger world. To be real is not to be finished. It is to be available. It is to know that life will ask more of us and not to flinch. Real things are wise because they know what love costs and choose it anyway. So at last in the story, we have a real rabbit. And so the rabbit runs. This is entry into the fullness of life. The rabbit moves, awkwardly at first, then freely, into the ordinary radiance of grass and air. He leaps, and here is the quiet genius of the story. He was a real rabbit at last, at home in the world. This is what resurrection looks like when stripped of spectacle. It is confidence in one's skin, in one's belonging, in one's sense of place. In terms of the inner life, this is emotional maturity completed by alignment, imagination and body moving together. In UU language, this is the fulfillment of our deepest affirmation. A life is shaped by love and therefore belongs in the great web of existence. The former stuffed toy joins the wild rabbits as kin. The book says he lived among the rabbits and became one of them. Notice that becoming real does not isolate, it connects. The longing he once felt in the summer, the ache for community, the grief of difference has matured into participation, not sameness, but affiliation. And then, as seasons will, spring returns. And one day, long afterward, the little boy came out to the garden and saw something run past him. Something familiar, something quick, something alive. It was a rabbit with the same little brown spots he knew so well. We never disappear from the lives where we loved and were loved. The boy recognizes him, and this is the final gift of the story. Becoming real fulfills who we always were already. The mark remains. The spots tell the story. We are changed and not. We are still recognizable to those who loved us truly. At last, a real rabbit, responsive, alive, at home. And perhaps that is the quiet promise the story leaves us with, that the work of loving deeply, enduring honestly, grieving fully, will not disappear. It moves, it leaps, it lives. Action steps. I've got 5. The first, think of one situation where you are loved, as is. One connection, a friend, a partner, a group, a gathering, where you consciously stop trying to impress or fix things or manage how you appear, where you let yourself arrive a bit worn, uncertain, unfinished. Where am I loved for who I already am? 2, appreciate those who have mentored you. Identify one person, past or present in your mind here, who embodies skin horse wisdom, someone seasoned, honest, kind, whose role was or is not to save you, but maybe to tell you some truth gently. 3, follow your longing. Notice where you feel the pull of the wild rabbits, or people, or communities, ways of being that stir yearning. Instead of turning away, ask what that longing is teaching. Ponder how desire is a compass toward authenticity. 4, create or join a garden. This can be literal or symbolic. It could be a community garden, it could be a small group here at Live Oak, mutual aid network of some kind, maybe joining in a cause, or taking a class, joining a writing group, a recovery circle. Commit to tending what needs to grow in ourselves and others. Finally, the 5th point, become a place where others can become real. Decide where and for whom we will be love, the love that endures. Be the community that does not discard the worn. To whom can we offer quiet but steady presence? May we go from here not trying to be perfect, but willing to be loved and brave enough to be changed. Namaste, blessed be, and so it goes.